It's an adventure every time you give an elected official a microphone. So I'm counting on you all today to be respectful with our limited time, and we're keeping this event nonpartisan, non-endorsing. That's like the political equivalent of Kids Bop for you today. For our first question, this is just going to be 2 minutes per participant, and I will have a timer so you know when you're going to be running over. And for the first question, every participant has 2 minutes to share a specific moment or experience that inspired you to pursue a career in public service. We just want to hear how and why you got started. So we do have a randomized speaker order, so we're going to start with Ray on that side.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ray Mueller. I'm the county supervisor for this area, District 3, San Mateo County. For those of you who don't know what that is, that's completely normal. City council, a county supervisor is like a city council, being on a city council, but for the whole county. We oversee a $4.2 billion budget. And the way I came to public service, actually, before I was a county supervisor, I was a city council member. For 10 years here in Menlo Park, twice served as mayor. But if you go back all the way to what inspired me to public service, I grew up in a large family, 7 kids. When I came into the world, my dad was a very successful dentist. My mom was a homemaker. Around the time I was in 3rd grade, my dad started to develop degenerative disc disease. By the time I was in 5th grade, my dad was completely disabled. And my mom had to go back to school to figure out how to support the family, make ends meet. And I watched my family go from having quite a bit to having things were pretty tough. And I was near the bottom of the kids. I like to say I was the oldest of the second litter. And we, growing up, we were inspired by our parents and the way they dealt with that. My dad became a minister. My mom really held the family together. And we learned from them that when times get tough, you actually reach out and you build community, and through community you build hope. And that was really inspired public service from all of my siblings and I. And so followed that up, and once I got older and was living here in Menlo Park, had the opportunity to start to give back, and now I find myself where I am now.
Great to meet. Can we give our supervisor a round of applause? Good to see you all. My name is Amourence. I'm the former mayor and current councilwoman of San Mateo, and the first Asian woman to ever get elected in the city of San Mateo in over 125 years. I thought it was a very appropriate metaphor that we had to drag up our own chairs, because that's a lot of what this work is bringing chairs to the table that haven't been for us, haven't been built for us, or maybe even invited to the party. So I got into this work, I think, through my family history. I'm like our supervisor Mueller, I'm the oldest of 8, actually. And I have 5 adopted sisters from China. And when my family hit hard times, it was good public policy that saved us. It put a roof over my head. I ended up in affordable housing. And I was working 2 jobs, almost full-time, at the video movie store back when we had VHS. Who remembers VHS? There you go. We were known for having the fastest rewinder on, in the city. And then the bakery where I did a double shift. And I remember watching my classmates go to parties and enjoy their lives, applying to multiple colleges, and remembering back about how unfair it felt that I was working and I had to work, and I didn't have the same opportunities that they did. I didn't have the luxury of time in the way that they did. And I really dedicated my life to changing that and creating opportunity for people like myself who needed chances. And that's what this work has been for me. I'm 2-time nonprofit executive director, former startup founder, and former mayor now. And it was a real gift to be elected in the city. And it was actually young people who brought me across the finish line. If it weren't for the power of youth, I would never have made history in my city. and been elected to serve. And so just to underscore the importance of young people and your vision, and when you see a leader who shares your values, the work it takes and the history that can be made.
Thank you so much.
Hello, how is everybody doing? I want to thank you for being here today. I want to thank the organizers for bringing us together for such an important cause. My name is Lisa Gauthier. I am currently serving as a council member in the city of East Palo Alto. I've been on East Palo Alto City Council for almost 12 years. It's like 11 and some change. I've served as mayor and vice mayor 3 times each. And how did I get into this work? I'm the 5th of 6 children. I was raised by a single mother in East Palo Alto. My mother worked at Ravenswood High School. So I know what it's like to be a part of community. When I divorced, there was no other place I wanted to be other than my community where I knew we could find family. And I just got involved. My mother was always like, don't complain. Let's look for a solution. And that's what we all should be doing. Instead of complaining, how are we going to solve what's happening? And how did I get into this? If you had asked me 12 years ago if I would be an elected official right now, I would tell you no, because I had said no multiple times to running for office. My daughter, who was home from college, she was attending Spelman College at the time, overheard someone ask me to run for office. And she waited. I said no again. She waited until we were home, and she said, Mom, if you're not at the table making decisions, someone else will be making decisions for you. I trust your decision making, and I know you can do it. She was the one person I couldn't say no to, because I would want her to be just as courageous and adventurous and put herself out there. So we ran as a family. I was elected to office, and I'm still here. I'm encouraging you today. Your voice matters. We need everyone to vote. Thank you.
Hope everyone's doing well today. My name is Antonio Lopez. I'm proud to serve alongside my colleague, Ms. Gauthier, on the City Council. I'm currently the mayor of East Palo Alto, and I have to admit, it feels a bit surreal looking directly at Menlo. In 2008, I applied to the school as coming from East Palo Alto's public school district, and so just to emphasize a bit about, I feel like so much of our lives are already written. I don't know if everyone's religious here, but we have these moments in our life, these forks in our roads, these challenges, and they compel you to say, what are you going to do about it? And for me, that was COVID. I was coming back from overseas. First generation, my family go to college. My family came from Mexico in the 80s. My father was a undocumented immigrant, got his papers through the Reagan amnesty bill. And so that opportunity, right, the door is open for you, and it's your job to make the door open wider for others. I came back, started my PhD at Stanford when the pandemic hit. My dad has been a waiter for over 40 years. He currently still works at Sheraton in Palo Alto next to the Caltrain. And like many essential workers, quote unquote, they got laid off. And they didn't have the privilege and luxury to telecommute, to go on Zoom, right? They got furloughed. And I had got educated, been blessed, been so fortunate to have received an education here at Menlo School and gone on to Duke and other universities. But not many people in East Palo Alto have that story. And many people still look at East Palo Alto as just a place of systemic poverty. And I firmly believe that if we have the same city after 20 years, our leadership has failed. And so it's your responsibility to move the needle. It's your responsibility to say, to get up here and say, we can't do stuff. We can do stuff. But you have to be part of the solution. So I ran for office. In 2020, there were 7 people running for re-election, 3 incumbents seeking re-election. I won my campaign, my election by 69 votes. I was down 200, thank you. I was down 200 votes on election night, and just to show you, like, imagine 34 people said no to me, I wouldn't be here. So local democracy especially matters. And so my why is a global pandemic. My why was the George Floyd protests. My why was my parents divorcing and me not wanting to be in that chaos. But how do you turn that tragedy into opportunity? How do you take a shooting in Half Moon Bay and say, we have to look at the conditions of farm workers? How do we look at the flooding in East Palo Alto and say, we need better infrastructure? So much of me getting involved is being the change you want to see. And I firmly believe that every single person in this room, especially our young people, you're never too young to make a difference. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Cecilia Taylor. I am a Menlo Park City Council member since 2018, and I am currently serving as mayor. My why is actually Sitting over to the right of me, my great-grandmother, my grandfather, and now my mother have all been civically engaged right here in the city of Menlo Park. So it is a part of my lineage and also my responsibility. When I ran for office the first time, I actually reached out to everyone that ran to represent the Belhaven community who lost, because for me, their voice was more important than the ones who won. And I actually sit on council with one of them today, which is Vice Mayor Drew Combs. It was important for me to engage with the folks who wanted to engage and to also see what were they doing after they didn't win. So when I ran in 2016, I didn't win the first time around, and I actually started an organization because I knew the work needed to continue. And then when I did win in 2018, I had to figure out how many hats did I really want to wear. And that meant that I needed to help encourage others to also participate. So I started waking up with this in my mind. 1, how can I be most effective today? 2, how can I encourage my community, my neighbor, and my family to be civically engaged? And to me, those are the most important things for me, and that is my why.
Thank you so much for all your answers. I hope that everyone here can see that there's no one background that people in public service come from. And just to touch upon a theme that all of them mentioned is, often we complain about things that are going on around us, and this, it brings to mind a saying that one of my high school teachers had, which is, if you don't vote, you can't complain. He used another word, but I'm not going to say it on stage. But this is really at this event, we hope that you can see, if there are issues that you see around you that you find yourself complaining about, step 1 is voting. And step 2 is that there's so many local community groups. If you're youth, there's so many youth councils that around here that are looking for signups. There's so many resources and so many groups here that are just looking for people. And that actually brings me to my next question. Which is that we're really hoping to motivate folks here to get involved locally. And so it would be great if you guys could share a story about a time when community involvement or feedback from the community influenced a decision that you were taking or a project that you were working on. And how did this engagement and interaction impact the outcome of this issue? So feel free to think about this, and whenever you have an answer, you can jump right in. This is the open discussion part of the panel.
So when I was running for supervisor, I did it over 2 years, and I I represent a 340 square mile district, including the San Mateo County coast. And I started to regularly, once a month, attend housing vigils in the city of Half Moon Bay. And there were a number of individuals who attended that who were undocumented, who were farm workers. And upon coming into office, and Antonio talked about how there was the shooting in Half Moon Bay. There were storms that happened before that. But the shooting happened in Half Moon Bay, and that moment in time could have gone a different way. It was a shooting, everyone was being taken care of. But when we went out to the site, we saw how people were living, and I took a bunch of pictures. And because of that interaction with people for that 2 years before, decided I was going to go ahead and publish those pictures to make sure people could see it. And then we went ahead and we said we're going to go ahead and create a farm worker housing task force to go out and inspect every farm and ranch in the county, which, believe it or not, politically, I'm not sure would have happened in the past. And then after that, we went and we now have 2 different farm worker housing developments taking place, working with the state. And I say all those things because, sure, we did it in my office in partnership with the county, but I don't think it would have happened the same way without the involvement of the community and those stakeholders who had for so many years led on that issue and were leading that and had brought everybody up to speed on what needed to be done.
Housing. I was thinking about as Ray was talking, thinking about the story I wanted to share here, and I was going back to the question of where are the voices missing, right? And when I joined council, we had done a demographic survey of our boards and commissions, and in 2017, there was zero representation of young people 24 years and younger on any of our boards and commissions. And because my campaign was youth-led and youth won, I had created an opportunity, a container to empower young people to continue engaging in the work and policy. And when we went through this demographic survey and realized that young people really had no mechanism to engage in policy work in an institutionalized, dedicated way, we set about changing that. And was really proud to launch a countywide petition, which gained a lot of traction and lobbied the council. And we were able to get dedicated youth seats for the boards and commissions. And so where there was no youth voice, we actually created dedicated places for young people to review policy, give community input. And we started with the Parks and Rec Commission, where I had served for many years, and never once in those meetings did a young person ever attend to contribute. And right now we're on the cusp of rolling out these youth seats, which will multiply the youth voice and amplify the youth voice and create an institutionalized legacy for youth participation in governance that never existed before. And that happened thanks to the voice and engagement of young people.
Thank you. Great job. So I have a couple of stories since I've been on council now for 12 years, and I also forgot to mention that I am also a candidate for San Mateo County Board of Supervisors for District 4. So the first one is before I even joined the board, joined the council, East Palo Alto and the Gardens area would flood with heavy rains. So in 2012 and 98 in the Gardens area, the same homes would flood and people would lose everything. After being elected for the first time, we had that flood, another flood in 2012. And so it caused me to join the San Francisco Creek JPA to talk about how we were going to save these people. And if you've ever been to East Palo Alto in the Gardens and walked on the levee, you're looking at the top of houses at that time. It is with that regional approach with Menlo Park and Palo Alto, East Palo Alto, Santa Clara County, and San Mateo County that we came up with a sea level wall, not a sea level wall, but a flood wall that will protect the Gardens area from a 100-year flood, which meant those individuals in that community where I live, they were all able to reduce their flood insurance and were protected, and they don't have to worry about that, which is huge. Another one is when we had those outings during the recent storm, and everybody was losing PG&E, and we had power outages for 4 days. We found that to be unacceptable. Working with then Assemblymember Diane Pappin's office, and a lot of my colleagues, Supervisor Warren Slocum, we were able to call a meeting and call PG&E to the room to answer to why we were losing so much power and get some commitments from them to do better in our community. And each person in our community they were given a check. Like, if you lose all your food, $25 means absolutely nothing from a company like PG&E that can do so much better. But we know now that our school district is going to be taken care of, and we'll get, if power goes out, they're the first that should be kept online. So we have some things in place that will keep that going.
Now, I'm just sitting here listening to the collective wisdom of this body, and one of the things that I want to echo from what my colleagues shared and Supervisor Mueller, and something that frankly frustrates me about government, but it is what it is. Everything's about timing, right? You know, we talk about Medicare for all, we talk about these issues like housing, right? It takes a while for the collective psyche of our county to be on board with something. But one thing that I lament, and I encourage you young people to really continue to push the envelope, is why it takes tragedy for these things to occur, right? Why does it take a shooting for us to think about gun violence? Why in the debate we don't even talk about school shootings because we're too busy talking about Haitians and immigrants, right? So you all have the mandate to bring normalcy back to our government, and I hope that you continue to do so. But to just answer the question briefly, growing up in East Palo Alto, public safety is something that's very near and dear to our hearts. One of the reasons we became a city that my colleagues, the OGs of my council will tell you is because we didn't have our own police department. And so having the ability to keep our streets safe, having the ability to go to your parks, to go to your schools and not worry about if your child's gonna come home, that's important to me. And 2 years ago in 2022, we had 2 shootings that were very graphic and out in the open. One in Jack Farrell Park, where a young man was killed in broad daylight. My colleague said, quote, "This is the first time that we've had a shooting minutes before a council meeting," and this is in 2022. And when you think about the trauma, the psyche, the triggers of our community, the things we've gone through, that's critical. And so we had discussions immediately following to install cameras in the parks because folks didn't want to come forward, because they didn't want to quote unquote snitch. And so how do we create a place as East Palo Alto is growing, as we're becoming a place that people want to come in and enjoy, making sure that our community was safe? And most recently, working with the chief of police, our body on the council on Tuesday passed a resolution to install license plate readers, because we had, again, when you think about all the crimes that are being committed in our area, we had a horrible stabbing earlier this year, and all we knew was there was a white van on the intersection of Bell University. But had we had the cameras, we would know who the culprit was. And so I don't want to be damper the mood, but for me, when I think about the community feedback, it's the mothers. It's the mothers of the sons that we kept losing all these years in East Palo Alto. And that, frankly, growing up in East Palo Alto and going to McNair, coming to Menlo, having those memories close to my chest, that's what makes me get up in the morning. It's how can I make our community as safe as possible? How can I make it so that in this county, the richest county in the California, one of the wealthiest in the nation, we have gun violence still. We still have kids overdosing on fentanyl. And so for me, it's working with the community, trying to bring in people together, understanding concerns of surveillance and police brutality and policing, but doing it in a way that makes sense and reflects the spirit of East Palo Alto and the spirit of our communities.
Thank you. And I appreciate being the last one to answer this question, because I had to really think back over the past 6 years what I would like to share. And this is actually something that is on the Menlo Park City Council agenda for Tuesday. So if you are free Tuesday evening, either virtually or in person, please join our meeting. We are looking at our environmental justice draft. It's actually, we are the first, I believe, the first city to adopt a draft for the environmental justice. And why it's important is that it is community members that came out through a group called the CCC team, which I believe is the Community Climate Change Team. The community went out and talked to residents and asked them what did they want to see, what was the most important things to them, what were the climate injustices that they wanted to mitigate and remediate. And so the list that we are looking at is actually what came exactly from the community. And when we talked about this about a month and a half ago on the city council, I recommended that we seed fund or program with $1 million to let the community know that we are serious about addressing their concerns. Climate justices didn't just begin today or yesterday. They have been going on for decades. And so it's important for our community to know that not only are we listening to what they say, and that we're looking at how to mitigate the problems that have been caused, but also putting funding behind it lets them know that we will do something about it, because usually it takes funding to make change as well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, all of you, for sharing your perspectives. I think like a common theme was that often in times of tragedy, it's when communities mobilize and come together, and that's when officials are hearing and using that feedback to guide their policies. And it's our hope that even in times when there is no immediate emergency, that people can still feel empowered to come and listen to those open council meetings and know that you can provide public comment at any of these city meetings, and just see, I mean, the fact that all of you are seated here today is a testament to how much your elected officials just want to come out and meet their constituents and listen to you. And you can just look around and see that, you know, that's maybe not what most people would want to be spending their weekend doing, but it's something that I think everyone needs to know is it's accessible, and that we should be participating more in these conversations. Wonderful. So just for the sake of time, I'm going to go to the final question. So we want to end off with just if each of you briefly could say just a few sentences about why voting in this election is so important. This is a little group lightning round.
So I'll go ahead and go first. So number one, voting is incredibly important. If you start voting young, you're going to vote more likely the rest of your life. I think of voting as actually a sign of self-respect. It's a way of telling yourself you matter. When you do it, you gain confidence, and you do it in the next election and the next election, and you're building a habit that you're going to use your voice to do good. The second thing I'd say about that is that there is evidence right now in elections that have happened. I know it happens. Antonio talked about 69. In the congressional election this year, that election to see who would be in the runoff was decided by 3 votes. That's 2 people changing their mind. That's how much it matters, and that can have huge ramifications as to who represents us in Congress on those votes. And so your vote matters. And the other thing I'd say is a lot of people, when they feel like their vote doesn't matter, they're looking at the national picture. So many decisions that affect your life are made at the local level, where if you cast that vote, you're going to change your family's life.
Yes, thank you. Well, I guess I wanted to remind folks that, civic engagement, while we are very entertained by TikTok, if you like a post on TikTok, if you comment on a post on Instagram, that matters not at all when it comes to who's governing and the decisions that they're making. So I think that there's a lot of people who are engaging in ideas and important conversations, but bringing into those conversations and your opinions into the spaces where decision makers are listening and connecting those dots is one of the most impactful ways that you exercise your muscles to form a healthy and sustaining democracy. Democracy and our, the rights that we have were hard fought, and I always remember that, taking the long view. Many of us up here on this stage would not have had the opportunity to vote, would have been lynched if we had run for office, right? These are the facts of our history, the suffering and the struggle that has been required to obtain the rights that we have that cannot be squandered. And we know that in this country, there are very real threats to democracy. Voting is the baseline. Voting is eating your vegetables. What I want you to do is go so much further. Go so much further, and don't listen to what we're saying. Watch, ensure, hold us accountable to what we're doing. That's where it matters. That's where change happens, because talk is cheap, and politicians are going to politic, right? What we need to do is make sure that we're eating our vegetables, that we're holding our leaders accountable, and that we are forcing the conversations and the change that is required to protect our lives and protect our planet. That's what's required.
Thank you for the question. And I want to say this. Why is voting so important? For me, my ancestors died so that I would have a right to exercise my right to vote. So I am a 5 of 5 voter, meaning I don't care what happens. Because of that history, I'm going to vote because I know what it means. And then when you think about what's at stake in this voting right now, women's reproductive rights are on the table. And no one, man or woman, should be able to tell another woman what to do with her body. Public safety is on the ballot. And voting rights. We know, I just said that my ancestors died so that I would have the right. There are others who died so that I could have the right. And right now, there are things on the ballot where they're trying to purge polls and not allow people to vote. We have to make sure that everyone exercises their right to vote. And in 1983, East Palo Alto became a city by 15 votes. Had 15 people decided to stay home and say, my vote doesn't matter, we wouldn't be the city that we are today. Small and mighty, but a city on the move nevertheless. please exercise your right.
Well said by all my colleagues. I'll only add that, and I think Amo got my thunder on this one, but yeah, I mean, voting is important, but it's the most passive, to be very frank with you, it's the most passive form of physical participation. It's a piece of paper you get every 4 years or 2 years. And a lot of folks, I'll be very frank with you, when you knock on their doors, they'll say, I threw out my ballot. It astounds me the amount of people who just don't participate. But I also get it. You know, folks are jaded. Young people can't afford to live here, right? The unaffordability of the Silicon Valley. Think of the logic. People are driving 2 or 3 hours from Antigua, Tracy, Stockton to Mount Flora and Facebook. We have the most innovative economy for the iPhone, but we can't figure out transit. We can't figure out housing. We can't figure out how to mitigate wildfires. So your government is not doing enough. And so what I urge you to say is be the example you want to see. If something bothers you, whether it's in a school council, the lunch, do it. And here's what happens when you start doing something. First, folks will laugh at you. They'll say, well, what are you doing? They'll look at you and criticize you, but then you start a movement, and that's when things get exciting. When you inspire, when you get other people involved, and suddenly what seemed to be impossible is now on the table. We did that for housing. We did that for immigration. And so when you look at where we are right now, and we have 2 people on the presidential ticket, and we can't even talk about the issues because people are fighting. Where 50 years ago, you look at the first presidential debate, JFK and Nixon, say what you want about Nixon or either of them, but there was a level of respect that we lost. So my assessment is our democracy, our discourse has declined. And so you and I, all of us, have the responsibility to bring it back. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two things to share. One of them is this past Tuesday, 115 fifth graders came to the City Council chambers in Menlo Park to talk to me. And we did a Q&A. And one of the questions they asked me is, what do you do if no one runs for office? I said, well, you're in the 5th grade. So right now, I'm here to talk to you about making sure that someone like you actually runs for office. And so we need to start out earlier with inspiring our youth. But the other piece was they came because they were talking about a constitution for their classroom, because they believed that the power should not only be in the teacher's hands. Very smart. The second thing that I want to share is that San Mateo County, the southern county, which includes East Palo Alto, Menlo Park, North Fair Oaks, Redwood City, we had one of the lowest voter turnouts. I want to say it was maybe 40%, and I say maybe because it could have been 35%. Extremely low. And because of that, organizations like Belhaven Empowered is actually doing a voter education center that is open 3 days a week at the Belhaven Community Campus. And this is to educate, to register, but then also to inspire, because voting is very important. And I started as soon as I turned 18. Now you have the option to pre-register at 16. That way you don't have to think about it once you turn 18 years old. I believe our youth are more engaged. We just need to give them a little bit more space so that they can show us what they want, tell us what they want, and also participate in what they want. If there is something I'm not doing as your elected official, talk to me about it and then tell me how you can help me do it. But do not expect me to do it on my own. I need you to come out as well.
Thank you. Can we just have one more round of applause for the entire panel? Yeah. Yes. So.
Thank you again to Ritu and to the entire panel. Can I just take a minute, in addition to thanking you all, please go out that way so you can get a thank you note from us. I want to recognize all of the elected officials here, because it's really exciting how many elected officials we have. So in addition to everyone on the stage, we also have South San Francisco's Mayor James Coleman. Sorry. We have the former mayor of San Jose, Sam Liccardo. Wave. Are there any other elected officials here that I'm missing? Mayor of Union City. And also we have the mayor of, she's still here, the mayor of the town of Atherton, Diana Hawkins. So just amazing how much our local community really cares and really is accessible. They're here. Go talk to them. Thank you so much.